"I live on Grand," said O'Sullivan rudely, "and there's no trouble to find me at home. Where do you live?" Dempsey ignored the question. "You say your name's O'Sullivan?" he went on. "Well, Big Mike says he's never seen you before." "He's never seen lots of things," said the most popular man at the dance that night. "As a rule," went on Dempsey, with a sweet tone of voice, "the O'Sullivan in this district know one another. You brought one of our lady members here, and we need to know a little about you. If you've got a family history, let's see where you fit into the O'Sullivan family. Or do you want us to drag the information out of you by the roots of your hair?" "Suppose you mind your own business," suggested O'Sullivan, quietly. Dempsey's eyes shone. He held up a finger, as thought a brilliant idea had just struck him. "I've got it now," he said politely. "It was just a little mistake, because you're not an O'Sullivan. You're a tree-climbing rat. Excuse us for not recognizing you at first." O'Sullivan's eyes flashed as he made a quick movement, but Andy Jehohan was ready and caught hold of his arm. Dempsey nodded at Andy and William McMahon, the secretary of the club, and walked quickly toward a door at the back of the hall. Two other members hurried after them and joined the little group. Terry O'Sullivan was now in the hands of the Board of Rules and Social Judges. They spoke to him briefly and softly and accompanied him out through a door at the rear. This activity on the part of the Cloverleaf members requires a word of explanation. At the back of the association hall was a smaller room rented by the club. In this room, personal problems that started on the dance floor were settled, man to man. It was hand-to-hand fighting only, and the fights were all controlled by the board of the social club. No lady could say that she had witnessed a fight at a Cloverleaf dance for several years. Its gentlemen members guaranteed that it would remain that way. So easily and smoothly had Dempsey and the board done their preparation that most people in the hall had not noticed that the charming O'Sullivan's social victory had come to an end. Among these was Maggie, as she looked about for her partner. "There's trouble," said Rose Cassidy. "Didn't you see? Dempsey Donovan picked a fight with your pretty boy, and they've danced out to the killing room together. How does my hair look done up this way, Maggie?" Maggie placed a hand over her heart. "Gone to fight with Dempsey," she said in alarm. "They've got to be stopped. Dempsey Donovan can't fight him. Why, he'll kill him." "Well, who cares?" said Rose. "Don't some of them fight every Saturday night?" Maggie was off, running through the mass of dancers. She burst through the rear door into the dark hall and put her solid shoulder against the door of the back room. The door opened, and the instant she entered the room, she saw the whole scene. The board of the club was standing around the floor, with their watches open to time the fight. Dempsey Donovan had rolled up his sleeves and was dancing on his toes with the careful skill of the not even stopping for a minute. Maggie jumped forward with a scream. She jumped in time to catch and hang on the arm of O'Sullivan that was suddenly lifted up in the air, just in time to grab from his hand a long, thin knife that he had pulled from his shirt. The knife fell to the floor with a loud ring. Cold steel pulled in a fight in the rooms of the Give and Take Association. Such a thing had never happened before. Everyone stood still for a minute. Andy Jehohan kicked the knife with the toe of his shoe in a curious way. He looked a bit like an ancient traveler who had found an old weapon that he had never seen before. O'Sullivan, with his mouth almost closed, whispered something no one could understand. Dempsey and the board members looked at each other. Dempsey looked at O'Sullivan with anger, as if looking at a lost dog, and nodded his head in the direction of the door. "Use the back stairs, foreigner," he said briefly. "Someone will throw your hat down after you." Maggie walked up to Dempsey Donovan. There was a brilliant spot, red in her cheeks, where slow tears were running down. With great courage, she looked up at Dempsey's face. "I knew him, Dempsey," she said, as her eyes grew dull even through her tears. "I knew where he came from. His name's Tony Spinelli. I hurried in when they told me you and he were fighting. That family always carries knives, but you don't understand, Dempsey. I've never had a boyfriend in my life. I got so tired of coming with Anna and Jimmy every night that I made an arrangement with Spinelli to call himself O'Sullivan and brought him along as my partner. I knew he wouldn't get into the hall if he used his real name. I suppose I'll have to leave the club now." Dempsey turned to Andy Geoghegan. "Throw that knife out of the window," he said, "and tell everyone inside the hall that Mr. O'Sullivan has received a telephone message and has had to leave on urgent business." Then he turned back to Maggie. "Say, Maggie," he said, "I'd like to take you home. What about next Saturday night? Will you come to the dance with me?" It was remarkable how quickly Maggie's eyes could change from dull to a shining brown. "With you, Dempsey?" she managed to reply. "Do you think I'd really say no?"